Hi, my name is Geoffrey Gee, and I'm here to welcome you to Ivory 3, the all-new version of the premier virtual piano software in the world. Let me take you on a quick tour of all the major features, and then we'll dive in for a complete tutorial. So I'm playing the Ivory 3 German D, Synthogy's latest in a long line of masterfully sampled acoustic pianos, and the first to use the expanded capabilities of Ivory's all-new RGB engine. Not only am I playing pristine recordings of this fabulous piano in an excellent hall, the Ivory engine is taking care to recreate all the nuances and response characteristics that I get when I'm sitting at an actual piano. Note releases were sampled and are triggered appropriately based on attack velocity and note duration. When the damper pedal is on, I get the increased resonance from the soundboard and enhances the sound in a beautiful way. In addition, sympathetic string resonance is provided to new and sounding notes based on which dampers are up. Whether that's held by the sostenuto pedal or the keys still held, or via the damper pedal. Unicorda playing was sampled dynamically as well. So I have a complete range of dynamics when I'm using the soft pedal. RGB stands for real-time gradient blending, and it allows Ivory to provide continuous touch to timbre, a sample-accurate response from every single incoming MIDI velocity up to 65,000 values. So with this power comes the ability to adjust the dynamic response, the hammer strength, and the resonance in entirely new ways. And the RGB engine does this for 4 stereo microphone positions simultaneously. Let's use this mic check preset to examine the mic positions. The first mic position is called side A. It's a stereo pair on the side of the piano, fairly close. It gives us a beautiful stereo perspective and a nice, beautiful, clean stereo sound. Side B is an alternate position for a close mic pair. It gives us a little more focus, maybe, and maybe a little bit more proximity to the treble. The third pair is a mid-side pair. This is a little bit more distant, and you have a unipolar microphone facing the sound source and a bipolar microphone facing perpendicular to the sound source. And with mid-side processing on the desk, we can see the stereo correlation between these two microphones, and we can adjust in a continuous manner from only the side and only the middle. Amazing possibilities in piano production just on that microphone pair. And then let's go back to the home page and we will see the fourth stereo perspective, this red dot in the distance. This is the ambient pair. And so here we hear the sound of that beautiful hall, and we hear the sound of the piano from a slightly greater distance. So all 4 mic positions are available, and they're all running when you want them to run, and you can mix them together. So to help us use all this incredible power, Ivory 3 features a brand new user interface designed to access everything from the most commonly used to the most detail-oriented parameters in an easy and efficient manner. So very quickly, home is where you select presets, you load the piano model, you enable mic positions, and you set their output levels. And you can also add mix ambience and a synth layer. Design is a 4-section tab where you actually design presets. It's all 4 sections here. So I'll show you. Instrument is where you define the characteristics like dynamic response, hammer strength, key noise, resonance attributes. Over here, touch is where you design a specific velocity curve for the preset. You set your tuning attributes and the pedal response. Microphones is where you route the various microphone positions to the mixing desk. And finally, desk is where you add insert effects and aux effects and mix the 4 stereo microphone perspectives and the synth layer into one final stereo mix. All 4 sections of this design tab form a preset. Finally, there's a preferences tab. That's a 1-section tab that gives you a global velocity map for you that you set up just for your controller. And you have some parameters for MIDI response and user interface options. So there you have it. You have the RGB engine, the Ivory 3 German grand piano, and the all-new interface. That is Ivory 3, and if you play piano, it's for you. Let's start out by examining the basics of the user interface, how to navigate the Ivory 3 engine. When you look at the plugin window, you see across the top, Home, Design, and Preferences. Those are the 3 main tabs that are always on the user interface. Looking down at the bottom, we see that there's a MIDI light showing that there's MIDI information coming in. And then you have the virtual keyboard, the blue lines here. You can play notes from the interface if you needed to. Along the right is the final gain for the plugin at this very moment. We'll leave it at 0 dB. The home page, at the very top of the home page, is where you engage the preset browser to load a new preset. Right below that is where you load the piano model. In this window, you can see all of the Synthogy products that you have bought. If it's an Ivory 3 piano, loading one of these models will populate all 4 mic positions seen right here. If it's an Ivory 2 piano, it will only populate the first mic position right there. Looking down here, mix ambience is that enable and the wet dry mix, and the parameters for that are right here in this box, followed by a box that enables the synth layer. Below that, you have this quick mixer where you can enable each mic position, and you can change the levels of each mic position. You can select the mic positions also by selecting where they are on the graphic here. Here I can turn all the mic positions off and listen to each mic position individually. You will see these little arrows here. I'm hovering over a couple of them. They will jump to the relevant parameters. So on the home page, this is the quickest way to access the most commonly used parameters, but the jump will take us to the details of whichever one it is. I'll go back. It's here, the synth parameters here, or the mix desk and the microphone routing there. So that's the home page. Preset selection, piano model loading, basic functions. The design page is a 4-section tab. This is where you can control the parameters for the instrument, the first section, the touch, the second section, the routing of the microphones, the third section, and the mix desk, the fourth section. These buttons along the top of the design page jump you to all 4 sections, but you can also scroll continuously through all the parameters. So all 4 of these sections combine to create the design page, and that is the parameters that combine and create a preset. So the details of this: the instrument section, the RGB engine and resonance characteristics are on the left. On the right are the characteristics of the actual piano touch, the key noise, the hammer strength, etc. The second section, touch, is where you set a specific design velocity curve for this preset, the tuning characteristics of this preset, and the pedal response for this preset. The third section is microphones. This is where we take the microphone positions and we route them to the various channels in the mixer. You can see a nice organized grid here. And this, finally, you have the mixing desk itself with channel inserts and aux bus and a mix bus. And whichever effect you're looking at, you can see along the left side. Grayed out if it's not enabled, and not grayed out if it is enabled. That's the Design tab. Finally, you have the Preferences tab. That's a single page, a single section. There's a global velocity map. It edits like the preset velocity map, but it applies to everything that the Ivory engine is doing. So it's a way to compensate for different curves in your playing style or maybe your keyboard controller. And then along here, you have the master parameters for user interface options and MIDI response. So there it is, Home, Design, and Preferences. Now let's dig a little deeper into the home page so you can discover everything you do right from the home page. I've just instantiated Ivory in my Logic track, and I can see that there are MIDI notes playing. That's the MIDI light down here, and I can see above the animated keyboard that there are notes coming in, but it's silent. That's because the default preset is silent. So let's start by selecting a preset. If I go into the different designs, these are design presets, I can see the various folders. These are represented, these are the different Synthogy products that I've installed in this machine here. The top one is the Ivory 3 German D. Let's open that one. There are 4 different subfolders inside that: single mic, multiple mics, cinematic, ambient, and plus layers. So let's just choose one of the single mic programs and get started. So it's loading the Ivory 3 German Grand, and here is a preset called German D Concert Grand. Okay, that's super nice. I can look at it and I can see that we're using one of the 4 mic positions right now. If I want to add another mic position or audition a different mic position, I just select it down here, or I select it over here where the sign for it is. This shows you where the mic positions are, so I'll actually engage the mid side as well. Now I'm listening to 2 mic positions. Oh, it's getting a little more ambient. I like that. Instead of mid-side, why don't I choose this ambient pair in the back here? That's indicated by this red light. Ooh, nice. But maybe that's a little bit too ambient. So why don't I add my side A, and I will actually take the ambient one down. And so here's mostly side A, but a little bit of side B and the ambient mic in addition. Okay, so I've done some mic selection and a little bit of mixing just right from the home page. I can see that there's mixed ambience added on this, the 8% wet dry on a concert hall. That's pretty good. Maybe I want to make that a little bit wetter. Or maybe not. I want to make that a little bit drier. You can see these little arrows here are jump buttons that will take you deeper into the interface instantly in terms of for the related parameters to the thing you're touching. So if I do the jump parameter there, I will be instantly editing the reverb here. Maybe I want it to be a smaller recital hall and change the pre-delay a little bit less maybe, and I'll do that. Ooh, that's pretty good. I'll go back to the home page where we were, and I can see that I've actually done the recital hall. Maybe I want to add the string section by Audio Bro. And I can try different synth layer pads too. Here's a PCM pad. Here's one called Juno pad. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, so I've done that. Why don't I actually explore some other presets? Here's one called multiple mics, and there's a whole folder here of multiple mics. Let's look at Paris Clean. Okay, that's a nice grand piano. I can see that there are 3 mics being used, side A, side B, and ambient. If I turn off side A, you can see actually that here's the other 2 microphones combined, ambient and side B, and they're quite a bit softer, so that's been mixed in a certain way. Maybe I would want to trade side B for a little bit of the mid side, or only the mid side. On the mids here, I have a little jump button that can take me to the mixer page where I can actually do mid-side processing, and I could change a little bit more of the ambient there. But we don't want to get too much into the weeds. We want to keep on the home page. Do all those things that we can do right on the home page. So let's complete the thought here. I like my put my Airy pad on and the main stereo pair, some mid-side. Oh, and I like that. Ooh, very nice, very nice. Let's just do a couple more here. If I got a little bit more time, we'll just experiment with some of the ambient ones. Here's one called Interstellar Ivory. Okay. We are there, aren't we? Oh. One thing I notice when I play this, I don't want to, it's not an advertisement, but it's nice to have amazing grand piano dynamics on something that's so synthetic now. But maybe I don't want quite the depth of it. Maybe I want to change the pad that's underneath. I might make one very quick change and maybe change the volume of the synth pad just a little bit. But anyway, I like it. I've done a couple of things to it, and you can see that the name of the preset is now in italics. If I want to save it, I could just say save, and it will ask me, because it's a factory preset, it will ask me to overwrite a factory preset. Now, if I'm always going to do that, if I'm always going to want the tweak that I made for Interstellar Ivory to be the same, I'll do that. Otherwise, I think I'll cancel that and save it as a new program. Here's Save As. So Save As, this is Interstellar Ivory Geoffrey, because this is like my version of it, okay? So I'll say that's good. And so now Interstellar Ivory is there, and I will find it in the user folder. And every time I select a patch I can find in my user folder, oh, here is the Interstellar Ivory that I had. Okay. The next thing in this menu, I could actually start a new program from scratch. Okay, let's say today. And here's my, oh, I don't hear anything. Okay, first I have to load a model, a piano model. Let's load the German Grand again as a piano model, and it will load all 4 microphone positions. And I start with basically a program from scratch. Of course, it sounds just like the grand piano, and it's amazing, but I want to tweak it. So I'm going to actually choose which mic positions and levels that I want. Let's add a little bit of ambient. Actually, add a lot of ambient, a little bit of the side. Here we go. Okay, and I'm going to give this a little bit mid-side too. Take the ambient off. Let's put it in a how about a jazz club here? Turn it on here. And I think I'm going to add a little bit more side B, trade some of the MS for the side A. Ooh, okay. So now I have something much drier than what I have been playing. And so maybe that's the kind of vibe I'm looking for right now. And so I have this. It's called Today, and I'll save it in place once I feel like I'm done with it. And there it is. It's not in italics anymore. Revert is what happens when you go to a program. Let's say I was just on Interstellar Ivory, and I can see it here. I'm about to load it, and it says, is it edited? Yes, it's edited. And when I load it, it will give me the last version that I was on before I saved it as my own program. So Interstellar Ivory now is in italics, but if I want to hear the original version of it, I will have to go over here and say revert. And now it is not in italics anymore, and I can be sure that it is the original patch as saved with that name. Oh, get lost in that one. Finally, you can delete a program. Say I am no longer in need of the one I wrote called Today, and I might want to delete it, so I can delete it. I can also rename it. Maybe I'm not going to delete it right now, but I'm going to rename it, in fact. So I'm going to rename it Tomorrow. because I do want to play this patch tomorrow. So remember, you behind all of these quick access functions that are in the home page, you have jump buttons that will give you a hint of the depth which is to follow. Next up is the design page, where we actually go deep. All right, let's get into the details of the design page, starting with the instrument panel. Again, there are 4 different sections of the design tab: instrument, touch, microphones, and desk. And so I'm going to show you everything that's on the instrument section of the design tab. So these are the things that are the attributes of the piano that you're playing. Starting over here with the RGB engine parameters, we have continuous velocity on, off. Continuous velocity is what the RGB engine allows us to do. So if you have an Ivory 3 piano installed, always use continuous velocity. No reason not to. If you have an Ivory 2 piano loaded, then it will play discrete velocities, up to 20 different levels of velocities. But let's leave it on as a default. Then we have a dynamic shift parameter. And this is telling the RGB engine, as I go from soft strikes to hard strikes, how does the curve work from the soft strike to the hard strike in terms of the dynamics of the resulting sound? And so I played it once with the softer, and here's with the louder setup here. I'll try to play the same way. Okay, and I'll play the same thing again with the softer. If you're playing it, you really notice it. But it's the middle touches, and as they're increasing, what kind of curve do you get? So this particular clean and bright patch that I've been playing has a dynamic shift to the softer side, and that's how I like it. After that, we have the resonance. If I look at the resonance and click there, I can see the graphic of the piano is lighting up red. This is sympathetic resonance. On the preferences page, I have the silent key velocity off of 0, so I can actually hold some of these keys down and not get any sound at all, but those dampers are up virtually, and if I can excite some strings that resonate with these strings here, then I'm going to hear these dampers, the ones that are up, and I can lift the keys. So I never played those keys, but those strings were sounding. That is sympathetic resonance. It's amazing. I'll exaggerate a little bit and play with this just for a second. Oh, super nice. Super nice to be able to do that. So sympathetic string resonance. Then you have the sustain a soundboard parameter, and this is when the damper pedal is down, all the dampers are up, and the soundboard resonates in a more extreme way. And so here's the resonance you get when you hold, when you play a chord with the damper pedal down. If I accentuate that, you can choose different soundboards characteristics. This is clean soundboard 1. Maybe I'll go to an extra resonant one and even boost its level a little bit. And so, oh, I can really hear that. It's an ambience you get from the 255 strings all resonating and the soundboard kind of vibing with the things that you're playing. It's a beautiful thing to be able to have. So you have those two parameters that involve resonance. Now over here on the right side, we have the character of the piano itself. I'm going to start from the top, but there's a variety of parameters, and we're going to go through each one of them. Timbre is simply a low-pass filter that's velocity controlled, and if I move it down, this is maybe an older-fashioned way to make the dynamic response a little bit different. So there's a low-pass filter that's been taken down. So you might want to use a little bit of that. If you put it at a 50%, you have some dynamic control on this low-pass filter, and if you leave it at 99, then there is no change at all. This is where I would recommend it, because this piano has been sampled beautifully, and we don't really necessarily need to change it, except as a sound design feature. Another sound design feature is called timbre shift. And what this does is it will make the piano play the next note away from where it would normally play based on the incoming MIDI note. So this is a very drastic parameter if you use more than just one. Here's a -1 timbre shift. So it's playing a lower transposition of a sample that would have been coming from higher. As I increase that, we can get very, very drastic immediately. So no longer is this sounding like a grand piano in the slightest, but you can use this parameter as a sound design tool if you want to. Positive values make things sound a lot more tinny, like that. But again, ±1, maybe. 0 is really your safest bet if you really want to have that grand piano experience. Design trim is simply, when you're all said and done with your whole design, with all 4 pages, you can, or right here before it goes to the mixer, you can actually tell it what the level is going into the mixing desk. Key noise, this is a huge one. Key noise, if I increase the key noise, we're going to, here's the key noise. So you can hear this key. And here's with the key noise removed mostly. Okay, key noise removed, and again, this wants to sit around 0, but some patches will want to have more key noise and some will want to have less. Let me just revert this clean and bright and see where I had it. I had it +1.5, and that was the sound that I stuck with. Let's go to release. Release 1.00x. That means no faster, no slower than the natural release of the instrument. If I make this a lot faster, or so it's unnaturally fast release. And if I want to increase that quite a bit, so you can do that too. So again, the slight adjustments are maybe more common than the drastic adjustments, and 1.0, which I can double click here and just say 1, and that'll give me my default 1. So that's good release. Stereo width. This is a very simple parameter. It just takes the hard panning of all the stereo mic positions and makes it less hard panning. For a rock mix, you really might want your piano to be much more focused in one area. It's still a little bit of stereo spread, but maybe not so much. So here's a little bit less. Shimmer is a huge one. Let's go. I'm going to go back to 100% stereo width, and I'm going to add the shimmer. What shimmer is the higher harmonics decay characteristics. So if I play the chord, I can hear all the notes decay, and the sound gets more sinusoidal as it goes on. And if I add a lot of shimmer, we're going to hear those harmonics. We can hear those harmonics taking a lot longer to decay. In this case, it's unnatural because I want to demonstrate it. Right? That's a positive shimmer. Some pianos really have a lot more of that than other pianos, and this is a way that you can change it and make it sound more natural to the piano that you feel like you want to hear. Artificially limiting the shimmer is going to make things sound a little bit like they're muted and decay very quickly. Right, almost like a palm mute there at -100%. But again, that's extreme. What did I have for this patch here, clean and bright? I added no shimmer at all because the piano itself was shimmery enough for me, I guess. Hammer strength is a huge one for the RGB engine. Hammer strength, there's a positive hammer strength, and here's a negative hammer strength. That sound is reminiscent of the una quarta in this case sometimes, but it's really just like the different, the characteristics of the hammer. You could have a technician come to the piano and dope up the hammers and change it that way, or you could just change this parameter, hammer strength. A little more and a little less, and that's how you might want to do it. Then you have stereo perspective. That's simply performer or audience, which means the left and right get swapped if you change it. So the audience and the performer. So I like to use the performer perspective because I sit at the grand piano and I play. Maybe on playback I might want to use the other perspective. Lid position: full stick, half stick, short stick, closed lid, and flap open. Let's close the whole lid here. Okay. Not much sound getting out there. Maybe we want to put it on a half stick. Yeah, but I'm in such a beautiful hall here, and I've got such a beautiful 9-foot piano. Let's open it right up. So that's the instrument panel, the first of the 4 in the design page. Okay, let's talk about the second section of the design tab. This is called touch. This is where, as you might guess, you define how the instrument, this particular preset, responds to your touch. It also is where you set tuning characteristics and pedal response for the instrument. So the first one is called dynamic range. You can see this is set at 34 decibels on my program here. This is the way I like it, really. You might find a greater dynamic range on an acoustic piano as you're sitting at it, but I like this a little bit compressed from that, and it's really the way I like to play it. What it tells you is what's the difference in decibels from the softest strike response to the hardest strike response on any given key. Okay? Now, from the softest strikes to the hardest strikes, you can actually change the design velocity curve. So let's get into that a little bit. I'm going to go to the middle parameter here called hardness, and I'm going to say, I'm going to give it a hardness, a plus hardness. And you can see the curve change. So the incoming velocities on the x-axis and the outgoing dynamic level from the piano recordings is on the vertical axis. So this obviously is going to be easier to play, harder. So I barely touched the keys, but I got that really super hard dynamic. On the other hand, I might want to be able to play in a relaxed fashion and play kind of hard, but have a lot of soft strikes playing. It maintains its dynamics, and you have your curve. So there's several curves to choose from. Here's a mild curve, and here's a moderate curve, and a little bit medium curve, and a maximum curve. Upper bias is very useful. It actually just changes the top half of the dynamic response. In this case, I have something that's going to level off for a while on hard strikes, or as the strikes get harder, but allow me to really, really attack at the very end and have that. Power is going to give me a change at the very early part of the curve. So maybe in this case, I'll go negative, and that's pretty nice. Go positive, then I'm going to get lots of velocity response quickly. Okay, on either side of this hardness, we have a vel min and a vel max. The vel min is like, what's the incoming velocity at which the response from Ivory starts to increase in its dynamics. So this is another way to control, and vel max is the opposite. When I'm going to max out maybe earlier than the highest velocity, MIDI velocities in this case. And it really compresses the dynamic range of my touch in that way. So let me just revert my program here. This is the way I like it. It's a hardness -1%, hardly anything, and 34 decibels of dynamic range. Now let's move to the center of this section, which is tuning. This is simple. Incoming notes get transposed by octave or by semitone. So octave if you want to have an octave shift in this particular preset for this particular purpose, and the same with the semitone transposition. Fine tuning. Then if you're tuning with a live band or an existing recording, you can tune in sense. Or if you want to tune to a different frequency reference pitch, you can tune by hertz. I have a string library where I have to tune to 442 hertz in order to be in tune with the string section. I do that when I'm producing with that. Then we have a tuning table. The tuning table is a way to make it so that we're not playing the equal temperament that we've been used to for the last 400 years of keyboard playing. In our normal tuning system, you can hear a major third. It's not really a perfect third. That's why we call it a major third. It's not a simple ratio. It's a compromise. We have perfect fifths and perfect octaves, etc., but we do not have perfect thirds in our tuning system. If you wanted to hear a perfect third, here it is. Okay, it sounds a little strange, but it is perfect. We don't hear those. We don't hear those that beating. So, what an amazing C major chord that is. But if I want to go to E major, oh, how terrible is that? Okay, so, but I could use a just intonation. This is your reference key. So now I'm going to go to E as a reference key, and now I can play perfect E major chords. Barbershop vocal quartets, sometimes they like to have perfect thirds, and they can because you're just singing. But here we have 12 notes per octave, and we have to choose our intonation system. Lots of resources out there to learn about tuning systems. For me, if it's good enough for Bach, it was good enough for me. Stretch tuning is a way of tuning a piano so that the pitches that you're tuning to on the high end of the piano are going to, the fundamentals of these notes are going to match better with the upper harmonics of these notes. So the 88-note piano plays in beautiful tuning all the way to the top. This type of playing really requires that sort of tuning. Piano tuners will use stretch tuning on an instrument. Now, in the world of synthesizers and perfect oscillators that are tuned to specific notes, you might find that sometimes you need to change to equal tuning in order for maybe the fundamentals of your high notes to match with some synth layer you might be using, in which case you can use equal tuning. Again, this is part of the preset. You can choose it. I'm right now playing a grand piano, and I want it to feel that way and sound that way. I'm going to go back to stretch tuning. So, grand piano, feel that way. While we're on the subject, let's go to pedals. Soft pedal is one of the most beautiful things to do on a grand piano. It shifts the keyboard slightly sideways, and so the worn areas of the felts do not touch the string. And in fact, the felts don't always touch all the strings. In fact, they might touch one instead of three of the strings in the treble notes. That's why we call it una corda. So as we said, all Ivory pianos come with dynamically sampled soft pedals. This is where you choose to use it or not. So let's use it. I think I just sold you on it. Let's use it. Now let's go to pedal noise. On a grand piano, when you hit the sustain pedal, then all the dampers lift, and that makes a sound, actually. I love it, actually, when I'm playing Ivory and I'm about to do something like really rich. I love to hear that damper pedal coming up. I happen to be using this wonderful Kawai VPC-1 controller, which has what's called a continuous damper pedal. So it doesn't just send on-off, dampers up or dampers down. It sends how far in the throw of my little pedal is the pedal at this given moment. And you can see in this graph for the half pedaling editor, the horizontal axis is how far my pedal is going down. It's a little jittery, but you can see that I went from the bottom to the top. And for this pedal noise, as I was saying, Ivory actually takes all this continuous data and turns it into a velocity for this triggering of the pedal noise. So that's fast, and if I do it slowly, I don't hear it. So if I don't want to hear the pedal noise, if I'm on a grand piano, I do it slowly. And if I don't care, or I'm just playing fast, it's a little louder. So how beautiful is that? Speaking of half pedaling, if the dampers are part way up, then the releases of your notes are going to sound different. I'm going to turn the ambience off on the home page, go back to the design page, and we can hear the releases change as this pedal moves down. So far, no change. It's going to start to change. So that's the half pedaling feature. So along the bottom here, I can reset this curve. I've never changed it. Actually, I like the curve. It gives me a little bit on the bottom where the dampers don't move and a little bit on the top where the dampers are all the way up. And it gives me a nice half pedaling feature, just the way it feels on my foot. Of course, you're not playing it, you don't feel it, but it's wonderful how it feels. 20 decibels of difference on the velocity track on the pedal noise. I can change that and make it more dynamic or less dynamic. That it relates to the pedal noise here, where I have a volume that's going to appear on that pedal noise and whether it's on or off. A lot of people might just want to remove that. It's just it's an artifact. The engineers don't like it. Pedal start, 35%. So where the pedal action, the half pedal action starts in the throw of the pedal, and pedal active is where the pedal is, where the dampers are all the way up at what pedal level. So this is a way to fine tune the response to your soft pedal. And there we have our half pedaling. So preset design curve for a velocity curve for your design, the tuning for the preset, and the pedal response for the preset. That's all on the touch section of the design page. Let's talk about the third section of the design tab, microphones. This is where we actually route the microphone positions to the onboard mixer. You can see along the left side here, we have mic 1, mic 2, mic 3, mic 4, and synth layer. These are the modules that you load a key set into, which are the different sampled mic positions. And then you can see the routing continue to a grid, which will send the signal to the onboard mixing decks. So you can load each mic position, and into it you can load samples from any of the Ivory products. Now typically you want your Ivory preset to have the mic positions loaded from the same instrument. So we would probably do that from this thing. I can say I can load the German D microphone positions, and it will preload everything into the mics 1, 2, 3, and 4. The one that's grayed out is not enabled, so it's not playing. So I could actually just enable one mic position. I can enable the second mic position, the third mic position, and the fourth mic position. Now, after that, any one of these can have its polarity inverted this way. You can change the polarity by itself. You're not going to hear it in mixing with something else. You might. There's also a millisecond delay that you can add, up to 20 milliseconds delay line. And this is something that you want to do if you're doing some very tweaky mixing among the different microphone positions. But at this point, I should tell you that there is a natural delay in the sound coming to an ambient microphone pair that's a little bit more distant from the piano. And it's important to note, you do not need to use this parameter in order to compensate and have a phase-accurate representation of the piano. So this, in other words, when you play multiple microphone positions together, Ivory is already taking care of moving the playback of the ambient, more distant microphones to the proper position so that everything is completely sample accurate and phase aligned. In fact, Ivory does this for you. If I happen to solo the ambient microphone pair, this is just the ambient microphone pair, it actually shifted it forward for me so that I get a direct key to sound response. So if I want to design a preset that plays just the ambient samples, I don't have any latency in my playing due to that. But as soon as I add another microphone position, the ambient microphones are now shifted to be sample accurate, phase aligned. In other words, only special occasions for your own purposes might you use this millisecond delay line. You don't need to. At the end of this box for each mic is a trim, and that is one of many places to do gain staging. This is out of the microphone position on the way into the mixer. For example, you might want to take the trim down a little bit if you are going to add a super high EQ boost in the mixer. Otherwise, this is not where to mix your final things. It's just an input trim into the mixer. Oh, there we go. Okay, the fifth box is a little bit specialized. There are 4 mic positions, and the 5th one is for the synth layer. I can enable the synth layer, and I have several possibilities for beautiful synth layers that have been provided by Ivory. These are things that you want to have under. The first thing you want to add under a piano is a bed, and this gives you that bed. There are several to choose from, all the way up to the brand new ones, like the FM electric piano and the string section by Audio Bureau, which are new to Ivory 3. Nice. So when you have your pad, you can change the octave registration of it. So up an octave, or maybe back down the octave. There's a trim for that. We have 3 controls to sort of adjust the pad as we want to have it. The attack is immediate, which is still a soft envelope, appropriate for the types of music that we're going to add a pad to, and all the way up to 4 seconds. Nice build up there, which is so sweet, so sweet. Decay, we can have a long decay or a short decay. So maybe I want a fast attack and a short decay on my pad here. Nice, very long decay. Or maybe I want to have a very short decay. Super nice. Release, as you might expect, I might have a nice long release. Then the piano can release, and the synth can last longer, or I want a fast release. Super nice. Super nice. Then there's finally a trim into the mixer from there. So we have 4 mic positions and the synth layer, and they can all go to the mixer. But you have very, very flexible routing options here in the mixer. You can see a nice diagonal line of these dots. The yellow dot is sending the microphone signal to a channel in the mixer. If I don't have any selected, then I have no routing and I have no sound. The diagonal line, so the first mic position, I might send it to channel 1. I could also send it to another channel and do parallel processing. Or I could send 2 mic positions to the same channel and do processing that will apply to both of them. Typically, and you'll see this in all of the factory presets, we want a nice diagonal line to keep things simple so that the 4 microphone positions of the Ivory 3 piano correspond to channels 1, 2, 3, and 4 discretely, and the mixing desk provides us additional routing through the aux bus, and that's probably how we're going to do things. But the fact is, you can route things any way you want to. So there we have it. We have microphone positions that get enabled. They have a delay line and a trim, and you select the key sets for each of the microphone positions. And the synth layer parameters get set here, and you can route them to the final mixer, and the desk will be our next chapter. That brings us to the mix desk, the 4th and final section of the design page. All of the channels, as we've noted, all of the microphone positions and the synth layer are routed to the mix desk. In the mix desk, you have 5 discrete channels, followed by an aux bus and a mix bus. Each channel strip starts with 3 insert processors: mid-side processor, equalizer, dynamics, and then a send to the aux bus. In this case, you can see I'm using MS processing on channel 3, I'm using EQ on channel 3, I'm using dynamics control on channels 2 and 4, and I have a send on 3 of the microphone positions. All part of the sound, that I'm kind of using at the moment. The send control, we're going to go over each of the insert effects and the ambience processing in a second, but let's talk about the send control. The send control can be turned on or off. Then it has a send amount, so that the amount of each of this channel that's going to be sent to the aux bus, and then pre means that that amount is going to be sent to the aux bus no matter what the fader is set to. And post is going to be where the send to the aux bus is less, depending on the fader setting. Following that, you have a fader mute, which will turn the fader to 0 without changing its preset level. So that's, we can hear just one thing at a time if we want to, this way. And after that, you have a stereo balance control. So let's listen to the stereo balance control here on the microphone position 1. And we just go all the way to one side, all the way to the other side, and back into the middle. That's a balance control between the left and the right side. Then you have your final fader. So let's talk about this processing now. Mid-side processing is intended exclusively for mid-side microphone positions provided by your Ivory piano. So the Ivory 3 German Grand has a mid-side, and that is where you have a cardioid microphone facing the sound source and a bipolar microphone facing perpendicular from the sound source. And I'll mute these others, and we'll just listen to my mid-side element of this particular patch. And it's actually set, you'll see, it's set all the way to the side, which means this is just the microphone that was facing perpendicular to the sound source and getting just the room ambience. And I can actually move this all the way and hear just the mid microphone. And this, by the way, is very important. This is a true mono source. In the case of a certain audio production, you want a true mono source. You don't want stereo microphones that have been summed to mono. You actually want a true mono source. In the case that you do want that, the mid-side processing and the mid-side microphone perspective is how you're going to achieve that. So that's mid-side processing. The next thing is equalization. So let's look at EQ. I'm using EQ on the mix bus here, so we'll look at it there. There are 3 bands. There is a low shelf, and that has a booster cut and a frequency cutoff. More bass, and then the top is a shelver for the trebles. And in the middle, we have a parametric equalizer with 3 parameters. That's why they call it the parametric equalizer. I have a boost and cut amount, and I can grab this little knob, and we can hear the boost and cut and the frequencies that I'm boosting and cutting, like that. And then the width parameter will show me the shape of the curve. A very wide width might be used for just to scoop out all the middle of everything, and maybe just to boost this, certain frequencies that are in a very wide range. That's the parametric equalizer. Okay. Following that, we have dynamics control. Dynamics, this is the compressor. And so every channel and the aux bus and the mix bus has a dynamics control. So this is a way to control dynamics of the audio. This is not, as we saw on the touch page, the way to control the dynamics that your virtual piano is producing, but this is about audio mixing. So we can see here in a graph, I can see an input value of this dynamics processor and an output value. And the middle one here, GR, is gain reduction. If I turn the threshold down, I'll see a lot of gain reduction. And I can play a lot of, I'm really killing this piano here, and I'm getting not very much volume out. That's because of the gain reduction. That's what dynamics processing is all about. So the parameters from top to bottom here, you have an input control to the dynamics processor. One is nothing, and then all the way up to infinity, which means it's like what we call a limiter. Nothing over the threshold gets louder. Okay, that's pretty drastic, isn't that? The knee is the shape of the curve once you approach and pass the threshold input. So this is the shape of that. Attack is how fast is the compressor going to attack your gain reduction, and release is when does it let off the gain reduction and how long does that take. Beyond that, the bottom section of this is the detector. We have 7 models to choose from. A valve type compressor, there are 3 types of them that were modeled, and VCA type compressor, there were 3 of those that were modeled, and an optical compressor was modeled. Vintage FB is vintage foldback, and that actually takes some of the output and puts it back into the detector, and it changes the characteristics of the threshold and the onset of compression. Finally, you have a sense control, which can be the peak sensor will take just the peaks, and it will engage the compressor on the attacks of the notes. Whereas if it's more set toward the average, then you'll see the compressor gauge based on the average level of the notes and not just the peaks. So you have a slider for that. Then you have what's called AC couple, and this sometimes when you use a compressor you get a little bit of thumping in the bass. Because the detector detected a level that was up, and then you could hear the release of it a funny way. But for the piano, a lot of times we want to move this up a little bit past 60 hertz, maybe into 100 hertz level, so that it will only compress the higher frequencies than that lowest frequency. There's your dynamics control. Now let's talk about the choruser and the ambience processor. So let's look at the mix bus here and engage the choruser, and I'll hear, oh, instantly I have a choruser. Well, that makes everything richer. It also takes us into the realm of audio processing pretty directly. Here you have a wet-dry control from minus 100% to positive 100%, and let's leave that in the middle here. Then you have how much delay. 15 milliseconds is enough delay that if it's moved with a detuner, you can hear the change. Here's a lot of detuning. You can change the rate of it to 4 hertz, or very slow for a more of a flanging sound. And feedback is going to take the output and feedback into the, oh, it makes some very strange sounds here. What are we going to do? Damping is going to give us a low-pass filter on top of that. So here's some. So now the low frequencies are fed back into it. And speed it up again. And there we have our choruser. With Ivory 3, we actually added a multiplier to the delay line in the choruser. And that really lets us do something very cool, which is use the choruser as a discrete delay line. So I have a 10x multiplier on this delay, and I'll make it even bigger. So now I have discrete echoes. They also have a detunability and a rate of that detuning. And I can add the feedback up, maybe turn the damping down a little bit. And now I have, all of a sudden, a nice echo ambience. Extreme levels here. Oh, I like that. I was just going to add this ambient pad. Anyway, so a lot of possibilities in sound design. As you already know, if you're this far into the tutorial, there's tremendous possibilities here. Let's close out here with the ambience, the mix ambience. We see this on the home page, and we use this. A little bit of artificial ambience at the very end of the mix bus is a very common thing to do. I like to use the concert hall at about 8% wet. Is good for me. You can make the hall bigger with the size multiplier. And you can make it wetter, of course, with the wet-dry mix. And there's a pre-delay before any of the reverb. You can hear that pre-delay if I advance it a lot. It almost sounds like a discrete echo, and then we're into the damping. Generally speaking, the larger the hall you're using, the more pre-delay you want to make it sound natural. So there you have it. You have the mix desk with the 5 channels, the aux bus, and the mix bus, each of which has the 3 insert effects, and the aux and mix bus with an additional chorus delay processor and an ambience processor. It all gets mixed down to a final stereo mix, and your piano tracks are ready to go. That is the design page. That brings us to the Preferences page, the third and final tab in the Ivory 3 interface. Along the left side is Global Velocity Map Parameters. And we have discussed the Velocity Map Editor in terms of the design page. And what this is a similar editor, but it actually applies to the whole instrument, no matter what preset you're playing. So the reason to change the global velocity map would be either because your touch is a little bit different than another touch and you want to act like it's responding differently, or because you have a specific controller that responds a certain way and you want to compensate for that. So if I touch the velocity map field, I see that it's set to linear right now, but there's several factory options. Here's one called Easy, and you can see the hardness is plus 23%, and it's using a moderate curve. So now, this piano is easier. It's much easier to play loud. And so across any preset you select, my playing style being very light can result in the type of sound as though I were playing harder. Alternately, if I go to the hard touch, and I'm going to make sure this is what's selected. Now, general playing is now going to result in softer response than I'm actually playing. So in the case of certain controllers, we might want to make some adjustments. If you're looking at, if you're playing a controller that's unknown, you can actually use this set button, and it will ask us to calibrate the minimum and maximum velocity. So I will touch the lightest that I want to play and the hardest I want to play, and we will see a curve that matches that. Okay, so if I like that, and I think this is the way I'm always going to want to play it when I use any particular this particular controller, I might save this velocity map, and I'll say it my controller. My controller's touch, and I've saved that there. And now every time I use this controller, I'm going to have a velocity map that will translate everything before it goes to the preset. In fact, I'm going to select linear for this one because I have a wonderful controller here that responds exactly as I wish, and the sound response is the way I want it. So I'm back to linear. I want to mention the silent key velocity right up here. I'm circling that. The silent key velocity says at what velocity does any sound at all going to be response from the Ivory, and that will emulate the fact on an acoustic piano. When you touch the key very, very lightly, you don't get any sound at all. And sometimes I like to use this to lift the virtual dampers of a certain note and have them ring out, as you might experiment on a real piano. So you can do that with the silent key velocity. If you so if you want the experience of feeling what the real piano sounds like, that's one additional parameter you can use. Now let's move to the right side, And there's just a few parameters that we want to point out and make sure you know about. Voices is how much polyphony. So we're using 100 notes of polyphony now. That's a good setting for the power of this Macintosh. You can set your polyphony to whatever number you want to, and to get the performance you're getting out of your computer. Knob tracking can be linear or radial. I prefer linear when I'm using a mouse, and so there it is. Offline processing mode, it's set at high quality mode right now. What that means is, even though the voice limit for real-time playing is set to 100 notes of polyphony, when you do an offline bounce, a non-real-time rendering from your DAW, it will actually render with unlimited polyphony. It's all virtual, and it's done offline, so it can render it with unlimited polyphony. If by any chance your host has trouble with this setting, you can go to fast, and your offline bounce will be limited to the 100 notes that you've set here as your polyphony value. But let's leave it at high quality. Then you have three MIDI-related parameters. Do you want Ivory to respond to MIDI control number 7, which is MIDI volume? Do you want Ivory to respond to MIDI control number 11, which is expression? And do you want the synth layers mix to be controlled by MIDI controller number 20? So you might have a MIDI continuous control pedal and control your synth volume with that. Then you have show engine performance. If I turn that on, you'll see the footer change, and you can see the CPU load, the voice count, the disk queue, and the disk load. And this is some maybe diagnostic tools if you want, or if you just want to see what's happening with your computer when you're actually doing these things with Ivory. You can turn on show engine performance. Very important. Next is Ivory version. This is just an informational display. But if you look down here, Ivory version, it shows you the version of the plugin you're using. And this is what you need to refer to if you want to make sure you're up to date and using the very latest version of your plugin. You can look here and make sure you're up to date and check it against the website for any possible updates. And finally, your Ivory items. So all of the samples and the parameters and the designs that you make and the velocity maps that you make and the documentation for the plugin itself are contained in an Ivory items folder. That's where you installed it. If you forget where you installed it, look on the preferences page and it'll show you where you've installed. In this case, it's users, shared, Ivory items. Everything you want is in Ivory items. Well, that brings us to the end of the Ivory 3 tutorial. Thank you for joining me. It's been a blast showing you all the amazing things that Ivory 3 can do and how it can sound.